Hello everyone, welcome to this video. Today we will be learning how to create a small Spring Boot application using Java, Spring Boot, the Spring Boot initializer and the Spring Boot itself. I hope you like it. In order to create a Spring Boot application, we will come to this site, the start.spring.io, and here we will configure our Spring Boot application. So we need to define which type we will be using. In this case it's Maven. The language is Java. Regarding the Spring Boot version, here it's kind of tricky. If we want to use the Java version 11 or before, we need to select the 2.x, which is our case. Because the version 3.x uses 17 or above. So here I will be using Java 11. Now for the group, I will be using com.dracula-venom, which is how I like to be called. For the artifact, I will be using Spring Boot Basic. As you can see, the name is also changed to Spring Boot Basic. The description is whatever you want to place. Tutorial on how to create a Spring Boot application. And the package name is how the basic package will be defined. As you can see, it's a mix between the group and the artifact. The packaging will be jar, and that's it for this set. Now let's talk about the dependencies. For the dependencies, we will be adding three. One is the web, the second one is actuator, and the third one is JPA. So web is used to define web services. Actuator help us to check production live data, and it's a mixture between things, but basically it allows us to get some information while in production. And the JPA allows us to interact with the Java persistence or the database. Once we have configured everything, we just need to click on generate. Actually, this one is Chrome, it's tutorial. Sorry. Yeah, I was saying we just need to generate, and this will generate a zip file, which we just need to import in Eclipse. Now we will import the project that we just created with the Spring initializer. In order to do so, we can select here the import projects, or here in the file there is the import option, and here we need to identify which type of project we are using. In this case it is a Maven project, so I will select existing Maven project. I will click on next. Now we need to look for the root directory. This root directory is where our pom.xml is. So in my downloads in tutorial, this is the name of the application, the Spring Boot Basic, and in here we can find the POM. So I will select the folder, and as you can see, this pom.xml is what it is being imported. So I will just click on finish, and it will set up my project. Okay. We need to give them a couple of minutes for it to completely download and configure. And you can see that it is imported because you see this structure. Here we have, this is the basic file that identifies that it is a Spring Boot application, as you can see. Okay, let's take a look at the pom.xml file. In here you can see that it is defining that it's using Spring Boot, and Spring Boot parent as the artifact, the version which we are using, the one that I specified we should use 2.x because of the Java version that we will be using, that it's 11. Here we have all the other specifications that we set, like the group and the artifact, which version we'll be using in order to export it to the jar file, and the name of the application, as well as the description. And one important thing is here in the dependencies, you can see each of the dependencies that we are currently using. As you can see, these three are the ones that we define in the Spring initializer: the starter web, the JPA and the actuator. Okay, so in order for the JPA to work, we will need to specify the database that we will be using. Okay, so in this case we will be using dependency the h2, so we need the group ID. Here it will become dot h2 database. Now we need the artifact ID, and it's gonna be h2, and finally the scope at its runtime. This scope specifies that it will be just available while our system is open. Okay, now that we have defined our dependency for the h2, we will need to configure it. So in order to do that, we will open the application properties, and here inside the application properties we need to type the following, that it's spring data source .url equal, and then the one that we will be using, that it's jdbc colon h2 colon m colon test db. Okay, now spring dot data source dot driver class name, and this one will be org dot h2 dot driver. Next one is spring dot data source dot, and the username, I will copy paste this so that it's easier next time. The username, by default we will be using SA. Next one is the password. By default Springboot uses an empty password. We will be using SA for the password as well. And it is not data source, is JPA dot data source dash platform, and this one is equal to org dot hibernate dot dialect dot h2 dialect. Oh, sorry. Yeah, like this. Okay, now that we have already configured our h2 database, now let's go to the main class and let's try to run it again. And as you can see, now it is running. Now, in order to be able to access the actual URL of the database, we will be we will be typing spring.h2.console.enabled equals to true. This will allow us to access to the console. So let's run this application once again. Okay, it's running now. Let's check on the browser. In order for us to access the h2 database, we will access this URL, http colon / localhost colon 8080 / h2 dash console. Okay, and once we do, we will be required to log in. As you remember, we place SA as the password, so once I click connect, we can see the user interface for the database, and in here well, you can input any query, but right now we don't have any information. Now let's create a controller. So in order to do this, let's create a class object. We will call this people controller, and the package will be controller. Okay, so as you can see, it created the package controller inside my main package, and it creates the Java file, the people controller. Now, how would Spring Boot recognize this as a REST controller? Well, for this we need to define REST controller. Sorry. And using controls and spacebar, you can It will show you which are like the options to import it from. It's a feature from Eclipse. Then if I click on the first one, you can see that it got imported. Okay. Now we need to define a method which is the one that we will be reaching. So public string hello world, and let's return the string hello world. So how does Spring Boot recognize this? Well, we also need to use the request mapping to do this, and we will define the value, and the value will be /hello world. Now, same as with REST controller, we need to import request mapping. As you can see, in this case, it's just one option for the request mapping, so that's why it was imported directly. And again, we can test our application. Okay, once it's running, let's just verify that in Chrome. In order to access it, we need to type http ://localhost 8080, but instead of h2, it will be hello world as we define. And that's what we are getting, the hello world that we defined in our code. Another way to do it is, instead of request mapping, we can use get mapping. Obviously, this request mapping won't be used anymore, and we need to import get mapping. As you can see, it's just a matter of importing it. We also need to specify, in this case, we don't need to specify the value exactly, we just need to specify the part of the URL which we will be using to access it. So let me stop the program and let's run it again. Let's wait for it to start. Okay, it's started, so let's check on Chrome. Here we are in Chrome, let's check, and as you can see, it's exactly the same result. I just wanted to let you know about it. Okay, now let's create an entity. In order to do so, let me go to class. Actually, let me do creating here the class. So it starts with the basic package. In this case, it will be model, the name of the package, and the name will be people. So again, the package is created as well as the class. So in order for Spring Boot to identify this as an entity, we need to define entity, and we need to import it from Java's persistence. Okay. Now we need to define the attributes. So let's define a private long ID, then a private string name, and yeah, I think with the name it will do, just for the explanation of this. Now for the ID, we will need to do two things. One is letting Spring Boot know that this is an ID. In order to do that, we can specify with the tag ID from Java's persistence, and we will also like this to be auto-generated, right? So generate value as well from Java's persistence, and this will help us to set the ID as the ID of the table and the generated value so that it is auto increment. Okay, as they are private, we need to define some public methods in order to access it. Let's define long get ID because we want to get the actual ID. get string get name return name. Okay, this is pretty much what we need. Let's just keep some space. Let me do this. Okay, now we need to create the interface. So in order to create the interface, we just go interface. What will be the name of the interface? In this case, people repository. Okay, we created in the same package in the model. So for this one, we will need to extend from JPA repository, and what will be the information that we want to send is people, and then long. People is the name of the class, and long is the type of the ID. Okay, so let's import JPA repository. It will be from the first option, and that's just it. Let's run our application just to verify that it is working as planned. Just make sure that it is running. Okay, so it's currently running. Now let's go back to our controller, and here we need to get the people repository. So in order to do that, let's define private people repository as people repository. And for Springboot, to identify that this is the repository that we just created, we need to specify another tag that it's auto wire. We obviously need to import it. We also need to import the people repository because it's in a different package. Okay, and now what this tag is doing is it will search in our entire project for this class, and whenever it finds it, it will assign it to this object. Now that we have our repository defined, we will need to create some methods in order to retrieve the information, right? So the first one is to list all of them. So we can say list, and then in here it will be people. Get all. Alright, so again, this is gonna be a get mapping people. So if we call this one, we will get all the list of the people. Obviously we need to import list, Java util, and people from our basic model. And this also needs to be public, get all, and we need to return a list of people. So in order to do this, we just need to access the repository, people repository dot find all, and this find all method is defined in our people repository, even if we are not seeing it, because Spring Boot is intelligent enough to know that we want to find all of our people. Okay, next method is to actually create a people. So public, how should we call it? Create people. Create people. And this one actually requires to have the information of the people, right? So in order to do that, we will use another hour. Let's first define this is gonna be what should it return? The people actually. So we want to return the people that have been created, right? So in order for this one to work, instead of using a get mapping, we will need to use a post mapping. And this is because we need to send all the information of the people that we want to create, right? So in order for this to work, we can define the same mapping. These are different because this one is get and this one is post. Let's import the post mapping. As you can see here, it was imported. And now we need to return, but first we need to get the people. So people. But this is not enough. In order for us to receive this information through the body, we will need to do something. We will need to do a request body, and then we import it, as you can see here, and now we will get it. Okay, so we will return repository, people repository dot save, and in here we will send the information of the people. So what this is gonna do is it will save the information that we are receiving as parameter, it will create it, and then whatever we created, we will return it in this method. Okay? Okay, now what happens if we want to retrieve one specific people, but we don't want to retrieve all of them? So we need to get a method, get people, in order to get that specific people, right? So it will be of type people. What we would get, this is gonna be a get, but in here we want to specify the ID, right? Because how will we know which people we want to get back? So we want to send the ID. So as we are sending the ID, we also need to receive the ID, right? So the ID is a long, but for Springboot to recognize this, we need to define a path variable. Okay, here we just imported it for the long, and we are returning the people. So how to do that? Yeah, in order to do that, we will return people repository dot find by ID, and here we have the ID, right? So what's the error that I am? Type mismatch cannot convert operational people to people. Okay, let's see what we can do with this error. Okay, in order to solve this, we need to specify or else, and then just return a null. And this will make sure that we are always retrieving or sending back a people object, right? Either if we find it by the ID, or if we don't find it, we return just a null. And that's it. Okay, now what happens if we want to update a people? So for this we need a public people update people. So this is gonna be a put mapping. In here we need to specify the URL people and the ID as well, because we will be updating a specific ID. So inside the method we will receive two parameters. The first one will be the people, the information, and the second one would be the ID. So for the first one we need to specify that it's a request body, just as we have in here. And for the ID we need to define that it's a path variable. just as we have in here. Okay, now we need to return a people, so we will return people, people repository dot find by ID. So with this we will get the people with the ID, right? But we need to update it. So in order to do that, we would use another variable. Let's call it no people, and then in here, okay, so no people. We need to set the name that comes from the input parameter called people dot get name. And now we need to return the people repository dot save because we want to update this one as no people, right? Okay, so in here, if here it would be or else get, what are we going to get? We don't need to specify a name for a variable, but here we need to specify return the repository dot save and the information that we are receiving as variable people. Okay, so here this is how our update people method will end up. Okay, last but not least, we need to define the delete method. So this one won't return anything. Let's call it delete people, and this is gonna be a delete mapping. People, and we will need again the ID. So let's import to this. Yep, and as parameter again we will need the ID. So let me copy paste, and then we are not returning anything, but we need the repository, and then delete by ID and the ID that we just received. Okay, so let me stop this and let's run the system again to see how it goes. Okay, it's running, so now's the time to test. Now let's test our web services. The first that we are going to try is get all people. As you can see, once I execute it, I get nothing because I don't have anything yet. If I do the same for the get people with the ID 1, I get nothing. Again, because I haven't created anyone yet. But if I select the create people, if I execute it using post, raw, and JSON format, this is the format that you are watching, then I receive back the ID of the person that I just created with the name. So if I get back to get people, if I execute it, this time I am getting the name of the person. So let's see for the update. This time I'm changing the name to Thor, and after I execute it I get back that it is called Thor. If I check again, it's Thor, right? So if I get all the people, again I am just getting this one single people, and if I select the delete with the option 1, you can see that it got deleted. And that's everything for this course. I hope you like it. And I'm very sorry about all the issues that I have and some mistakes I made during the recording of this video. I actually noticed that my clips, some of the process it's not recorded because of my recording tool. I'm really sorry about that. I'll try to make it more useful in the future. But yeah, I'm learning and I hope I can do some better videos in the future.